Hello, student. Today we're gonna have class 4. Last class we have studied the general content of all content composing of this book. This book is written by Canadian, so most example of this book in the future will be used of Canadian cases. Okay. And we as I told you, we have a previous class, and we have studied, general descriptions and general content which compose of this book. Today, prior to go to practice, we will have some environment informations of trading in this day. And once we are talking about the environment, the trading environment, it's not, uh, the climate environment and other things. Once we said environment, we are saying the trading environment. The trading environment is typically said that the GATT and WTO and FTA, because these organizations is very important, which makes the obstacle of trade. Sometimes, which will makes the liberalization of trade, but sometimes it's as a role of the obstacles to prevent the pre-trading. It's depending on the situations of the each year and each event according to the global situations. Today, we will start, GATT and WTO as a trade barrier. What do you think of trade barrier? Once we told trade barrier, what can you imagine? What is a trade barrier? Guess what? Trade barrier is actually it's a little abstract, but it's a trade barrier which prevent pre-trading between countries, among global trading circumstance. Uh, okay, here is chapter. We will read, okay, and we will detect a certain, items and words which should be understood uh, once we are studying this, subject. Uh, Once we talk to the GATT WTO trade barrier as a reader subtitle, the acceleration trade liberalizations and constant lowering tariff barrier, meaning that the lower the tariff is a tax, which is imposed to the product once you know, jump into other country by product, by service, whatever, okay, which is compensation by by money and payment, okay. Because what? Because for what? Uh, that's because each country want to prevent their indigenous companies, against abroad company. Okay, because sometimes they are very competitive, because they are very strong. Sometimes to resist, outcoming the product, but sometimes, the exporting and importing product is sometimes overwhelming domestic, and be make a big damage on in indigenous industry. So the government should watching this phenomenon and control the trading, from abroad. So they use typically the tariff. The tariff is a taxation which can impose the product, carrying off, which will jump in, which will transit, the barrier. So the barrier, I mean, between two countries. So as imposing high tax tariff, you know, importing product uh, loses their competitions, against the domestic product. So it was most effectively used for a long time as a typical method to prevent their domestic companies. Okay, but as time goes on, especially after Second World War, the global society felt the necessity for free trading. For what? For recovery of the First War. Okay, while the second two successive, the global war, uh, especially the European area was destroyed. So they needed to reconstruct their area, but their resources of its own country is very limited to build, huge recovery because of the huge destructions, huge destructions owing to the war. So they fear to trading with a low price because in this day, because of the higher tariff, each product importing from other country was a higher price. Okay, so after wars, uh, peoples were starved and peoples of poverty, so they don't have much money, to pay for the taxed, higher tariff imposed product. So they feel necessity to lower the tariff. So they gather and settle down to a lower, the tariff policy, which can be curbed all of the world. That is called GATT, General Agreement of Tax and Trade. Okay, so after that, the global effort to lower the tariff started, and as time grew, gradually developed, the countries gradually agreed to a lower and lower tariff, eventually to zero. Okay, so sometimes we will not pay for the tariff among the countries which is associated with the WTO and FTA. And this is the history telling about the trade barriers development. Okay, so we have to more enthusiastic how this development was proceeded. Uh, so I'll go ahead. So the tariff barrier coupled with the mounting industrializations of developing country, okay, have had the impact to hat our past client country have become supplier companies. Okay, since the creation of World Trade Organizations, as long as I know, was World Trade Organization (WTO) was replaced by the General GATT. The WTO is a development of the previous GATT agreement. For what? Because as time goes on, the era changed and environment changed. In the era of, once the General Agreement on Trade and Tariff was composed, there was no concept of service. Also, there was no any jurisdiction power of GATT to punish the countries which break the law of GATT. So they feel necessity to have any jurisdiction power to penalty, to the countries which break the law, which break the agreement. So the WTO was generated by this purpose to get, and the power to punish the company which do not keep, do not keep the agreement and to accomplish to a complement what? To a complement the service sector, okay, service sector and intellectual sector. The days once, when the GATT was generated, there was no concept regarding the intelligent right and the services. Only commodity was focused on trading tariff. Okay, so time goes on, the service and intelligence concept and this industry was grown up. So GATT could not cover all of these, sectors, especially for the penalty for the breaking, countries. That's the reason why GATT was born. This is the telling about the story of this one. Since the creation of World Trade Organization (WTO), which replaced what the general the GATT, WTO is the succeeding what the General Agreement of Trade. We call this one the GATT. Okay, GATT. So we have less protections. Protection what? Domestic industry. Okay, because the GATT agreed lower tariff. Okay, lower tariff. WTO more and more. Okay, so we don't have or less protection devices to protect the domestics. Okay, domestic means the traditional market. So we have less protection of our privileged. Privileged means preferred. So more preference. Okay, stations, more privileged situation in our traditional market. So we have no method, no device to protect the domestic against alien product importing inside country. Okay. So whether this is proportional customs treatment or rate of duties. Okay, by this, okay, the higher duties, okay, higher duties. We protect the traditional market, but we don't have any method, any way to protect the domestic. As we start with WTO, we are therefore focused. We are therefore faced with increased competition. You understand this one, right? Because no more tax imposed on goods or service or intellectual right, which imported into their own country. Okay, into their own country. So we have to compete at the same conditions as the company in the domestic area. Even product from abroad should be same conditions. Okay, so the WTO main principle is equal treatment. No preference to domestic, to indigenous companies. Okay, the principal policy of WTO is equal treatment to all of product, regardless is domestic or alien. Okay, so this is the principle of WTO. But in this day, FTA is developing, but the principle actually is the FTA aim to more benefit, more preference to the affiliated countries. Okay, actually, this is resistance to against the WTO principle, because WTO principle represent equal treatment, but FTA serves preference to the country which is aligned together. Okay, this is a key issue in this day, how we harmonize between two trends. Okay, so the strength and power of WTO is getting perished because of what? Because of the FTA is increased in this day. We're talking about that later on, once you face the pre-trading and the trade organizations. Once we are talking about that, but this chapter we're just thinking of the development of trading environment. Okay, then we are therefore faced with increased competitions. You understand why this us represent the increased competitions. The increased competition because we got rid of all what? Tariff. Okay, so no more discrimination, no more preference to what? To domestic. So we have to compete together, meaning that this is increased competitions. Increased competitions meaning that domestic company and alien company compete together at the same condition, at the same level. Okay, this is also give you some idea. Okay, you don't have to scary trading with company in abroad, company in other alien company strange area, because you don't have to spend your foreign cost more. Okay, the foreign cost meaning that the cost, because you are not familiar with the area, people, culture, law, frankly, you will spend minimum cost as a foreign. Okay, as a foreigner, we call the foreign cost. Okay, we cannot save 0%, but we can spend at least cost. Okay, because no more barrier as regulations. Okay, no more barrier as regulations like the tariff barrier, non-tariff barrier. Non-tariff barrier is the different story. We're talking about that later. Okay, but non-tariff regarding the non-tariff policy, WTO also watching for that. Okay, watching for that, and sometimes penalty or sometimes impose the penalty. But in terms of tariff tax, which is imposed to the product, exporting product. So not only on our foreign market, but also our domestic market. However, there is a positive aspect of all this. Okay, positive, negative. We have negative absolutely, but we have a more positive aspect of all this, as not imposing higher, tariff. Okay, by the agreement of WTO, by the affiliation of WTO. Okay, so. Okay, we will see more. Okay, and then here. Okay. we have talking about this. Okay. We are therefore faced with increased competition, not only on our foreign market but also our domestic. Okay. Market. However, there is a positive aspect of this. Okay. Uh, the firm that succeed in holding into the domestic market in the face of foreign competition. Okay, understand? Because the foreign company also jumped in our domestic market without additional tariff. Without additional tariff, meaning that they can share with a competitive price without any additional cost increased. Okay, then they have the competitive price against indigenous company, domestic company. Okay, so domestic company is faced with the situation to compete, to compete against foreign firms. Okay, either through modern technology or improved product lines are proving that they can also compete internationally, even if they never export before. Do you understand this one? Okay. Once we have a higher tariff, even you have very competitive, very fancy and very functional product, you are very scary because you have another skill to, come up the barrier, trade barrier. Trade barrier is very scary. Even you reduce your cost and you have very competitive price in your domestic, but once you try to export that to other country, regardless of your mind, regardless of your intentions, your price will be increased because of a higher tax to protect their, domestic company. Okay? But now you don't have to worry about. You can go anywhere with your price sharing sold in your domestic country. Okay? So you can sell same price, same level, with the same level quality to other country because you don't have to worry about any additional, barrier to come over. Okay? Okay, this is saying like that. In next. So, as a company which has no experience of exporting, they can jump into new area of exporting their product to other countries. So your competitions as a domestic company will be increased because more and more company jump into your area because they has more easy to handle their business in other country. Okay? You too, the bossry, you can also going out for what? For exploring new market. Okay? To exploring new market because you can freely trading anywhere. Okay, in practical term, let me show you the next paragraph. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you may see this one. I'll move here. Okay. In practical terms, manufacturers and produce serve a given market, whereas they serve the manufacturers and producers. Okay. TH meaning stand for the trading house are dependent on their supplier for exportable product. Okay, while manufacturers has two choice to work with a trade house or create their own in-house export department. Okay, do you know what means the trade house? Trade house is intermediate media connecting export and importing. Okay, we call that trade house. Okay, this is trade house. Trade house is a connect, connect, connect the seller and buyer. Okay. You also can be a trade house, or you can be a manufacturer also exporting, or you can be uh, either both. Okay, both. Okay. Actually, because of these organizations, this kind of farms, operations, the the company which has no experience of exporting can do exporting, okay, by help of this organization like trade house, okay, or later on they will free from this organization and they themselves can handle and explore the market for their own custom. Okay, it's possible now because trading circumstance is very well proceeding and developed in this day. So anybody who has intentions to exporting or importing can proceed their friend easily with the help of many organizations and very abundant information regarding trading. Okay, so you don't have to worry about going out for selling or buying product, not in your domestic but in alien countries. Okay, but in foreign world. Okay,